Hello and welcome to Rusted Metal, where I get flack for discussing 80s metal. I'm your host, Zerb, and with me tonight will be my good friend Flack. Flack is a good friend of mine. His full name is Rob Flack O'Hara, and he's going to explain tonight how he got Flack once he shows up. He's on his way, and he should be here really soon. And I think that's him. Come on in, bud.
Rusted Metal! What's up, my friend? What's going on?
Yes, I am so glad you are here.
Woo! I got on my headband. I got my sweet 80s shades. I got on my I got some Converse shoes with some bandanas around the top, and I'm ready to do some 80s metal rocking, my friend.
I am so glad you didn't wear that half shirt tonight.
I went no shirt.
That's
an open shirt.
That's what I'm saying.
Right, I'm all
just
open
so
shirt. So if it gets cold, I'll put on the half shirt. I'll warm it up a little bit for the ladies.
Well, me too. I came out in my spandex. I bought the zebra skins, as you can see. And I got the muscle shirt on, even though the flab is hanging out from the sides here. And I'm sorry.
I like that. Did you make the cuts yourself, or that come with
I did.
Oh, those are sweet, dude.
You like the razor cuts in the front, too? The way it hangs down like that?
The three of them in a row. They're all at the same angles. Tight.
Thank you so much, man. I was just trying to be as gnarly as I could.
That's awesome, dude. That is radical? I don't think metal guys said radical.
I don't think they said radical either.
No, it's fine.
I don't know if they said gnarly, too. We're at it. Were you ready to start the show, bro?
Absolutely, man. I'm ready to rock.
As I told the buds out there who are listening, and I wanted to explain how we got our nicknames, and I would love for you to go ahead first.
Sure, yeah. I have been known as Flack. Actually, for a long time, it was Jack Flack, and I started out as Jack Flack back in the BBS in the modem days. Actually, it comes from Cloak and Dagger, the movie. It's a 1984 movie with Henry Thomas. Most people know him as Elliot from E.T., but he was in a movie called Cloak and Dagger. And basically what it was about was he had a very active imagination. He was really into role-playing games, and he played this, it's like a World War II type role-playing game, and so his character's name was Jack Flack, which was played by Dabney Coleman, and so the theme was Jack Flack always escaped, and what happens in the movie is that of course, there's a computer tie-in. If you know me, there was an Atari cartridge that shows up for the Cloak and Dagger game, which never came out. It wasn't a real game yet, but these spies had hidden secret plans in it, and if you, only got to level 99 and got a certain score, then you could, reveal the secret plans, which I always enjoyed that visual, that on the other end there would be spies. They're like, oh, we really suck at this game. We're never going to get to the plans. But anyway, and also Dabney Coleman played his father in the movie, so it was kind of like this dual role. But anyway, Jack Flack was this imaginary cool guy that always got out of every situation, and he was always quick on his feet to come up with solutions and things. So I thought Jack Flack was really cool, and like I said, I was calling Commodore BBSs at the time and needed a name, and it turns out there were about 50,000 people already using Metallica, so instead I went with Jack Flack, and so and it's just stuck all these years.
How did it feel when Flack became a form of wave file in music? Like, did that just singe it for you? You're like, this is it.
I think the first time I heard someone say, hey, they're getting Flack music or whatever, I was like, well, what? Like, I checked my hard drive to make sure they weren't downloading all my songs or whatever, right? And because a lot of people had names like, Slip Discman or, the Copy Pirate Master or stuff. But Jack Flack was normal enough sounding that a lot of people thought my name was Jack. So I would get phone calls to my house for Jack or for Jack Flack, and my mom would say, "Yep, hold on," So everybody in my family knew that I was, Jack or Jack Flack, to the point where when people, I wouldn't say it's completely interchangeable with my name, but I would, like if I were in a room and someone said Flack, I would definitely turn my head. Right. It was just so accustomed to answering to that. So, and my license plate's actually Flack. I don't know.
Oh my gosh. Now that's cool.
So
that is cool.
Which is always fun trying to explain that to people. They're like, oh, and now you say, oh, it was a modem alias, and they look at you with glazed over eyes, and then you say it was kind of like a right. Then you say modem. It was like a gamer tag, and they go, oh yeah, okay, I get that. Yeah, you have to update the terminology.
Well, you look like a Jack. You could get away with that.
Get away with Jack. So what about Zerbinator? Where did that come from?
Zerbinator came from a mix of two things. I worked for the U.S. Botanic Gardens in D.C., and the gentleman that I worked with, his name is Wally. At this time, I was probably 19, 20 years old, and the gentleman came to me, and he said, one morning, the Zerbinator. And it came from a Saturday Night Live sketch. You remember that?
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, he said the guy. What was his name? The one who played Deuce Bigelow.
Yeah, making copies. That guy, right?
Making copies.
Rob Schneider.
Yeah, and that's where Wally got it from, and I guess he had seen it the night before, so he said the Zerbinator, and it just stuck with me. Everybody at the U.S. Botanic Gardens called me Zerbinator when they saw me. And that name has been with me since 1990.
That's funny.
So it's stuck with me forever. So it's neat. It's a fun one, and it's neat that I put it on websites as fast as I could when things open up, even stuff that I didn't want to sign up for, so I could have that name, because there are a lot of them now.
There are a lot of chat things where I became Flack 405, which is my area code here, because Flack, was really common. I was too late on that boom to get flack.com or flack.org. Every now and then the guy, I put in for a list that I wanted to buy flack.org, and every now and then they email me an offer, and they've dropped it down to like $750,000 or something. So, which all I want is the email address there. So it's not really, I can't afford that at this point. If I win the lottery, that's what I'll do. They'll be like, what are you going to do with your $1 million? I'm going to buy this stupid domain name so I can have one email address.
One day. Yeah, it doesn't hurt to dream.
Exactly.
Man, that is ridiculous. Mm-hmm. Well, what we're going to do in this show, of course, is talk about what we call, which I can't believe we're doing it now, rusted metal is the retro metal bands that we grew up with. I call them retro metal bands because they are now hitting like 60 years old. Some are late 50s, and they're still jamming out, which is wonderful. The band that we're starting off with, of course, is going to be AC/DC.
Yeah, we're going to go alphabetical, right? Is that what we decided on?
Absolutely. That was a wonderful idea. That's something you came up with. Let's go alphabetical. And nobody comes before AC/DC unless you want to do ABBA, but they're not really metal.
No.
And no matter how you spell it, forwards or backwards. I don't know where I was going with that. All of a sudden, I thought about ABBA, and all of a sudden a song came in my head, and I was stuck in ABBA.
If you change your mind.
That's it.
If you change.
Take a chance.
Take a chance, that's it. AC/DC hails from Sydney, Australia, and they are a mix between hard rock, blues rock, rock and roll, and even have been categorized in the metal department. Mm-hmm. Not really heavy metal, but they fall into that brick.
Well, that genre, the name has changed over years. You know what I mean? Like what was heavy? I mean, AC/DC was heavy, rock or whatever you would call back then. Now, it wouldn't surprise me to hear it in an elevator. You know what I mean?
That's true.
And actually, one of the things that I'm going to mention later is Oklahoma City. We have our NBA team, the Thunder, and their theme song is Thunderstruck. So when the team comes running out, so you go from a pretty obscure metal band in Australia now to being the theme song for an NBA franchise. So
Do you think they get a cut of that?
Absolutely, yeah. I've read that, and I read a whole article. All the sound of, like, they play little song snippets whenever each team gets the ball and goes down, like little loops, of songs or whatever. And yes, they have to get they pay for every one of those. So
that is beautiful.
They make a lot of money off that.
That's gotta make you feel good that a song you wrote when you were probably 18, 19 years old is now, making people cheer as they throw a round ball into a net.
Probably something they did not have in mind when they wrote that.
Not at all. Like, one day I'm going to be on a court, man, and I'm going to sink some
They
hoops.
might not even know what basketball is. Well, I'm sure they have basketball in Australia. But
I think it started in Australia.
But the ball bounces the other way in Australia.
That's true.
I've heard that.
That is true. That's what I've heard.
If you flush a basketball, it goes the other way. I've completely derailed you in the first 5 minutes here. Tell us about when AC/DC started.
Well, they started in 1973, so I was 3 years old, and you were thought of.
I was being born, yeah. I was born in August of 73.
Well, 1973, and of course to present, and we're going to talk about present in a little while, and I'll let you do that. But before we get to that, because from the time that we picked AC/DC, a lot has changed over the past couple.
Yeah, there's been some interesting news over the last few weeks. A couple news stories.
But real quick, I'm going to go over the labels that they've recorded with, and that would be Albert, EMI, Columbia, Epic Records, Atlantic Records, Atco Records, Elektra Records, everybody, East West Records. And this band, of course, you can find where? acdc.com. The members in the band currently are Angus Young on guitars, Phil Rudd on drums, kinda.
Maybe.
Cliff Williams on bass, Brian Johnson on vocals, and Steve Young, who is Malcolm Young's nephew, on guitars.
And that's a recent change.
Yeah, it is, because poor Malcolm Young has been... it was quiet for a while, but it was released that he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, the poor gentleman. And that's sad, the poor guy. Mm-hmm. One thing about Malcolm is when he was much younger, I would watch him play, and he would bounce up and down a lot. And that seemed to be all he would do, was just stand there and bounce up and down. And I thought, that poor guy, he's not going to have heels left. And then I was thinking about Angus Young, and then you think about his poor kneecaps doing that.
Sure.
The scissors kick across the thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm surprised the whole band just hasn't fallen apart yet, but they just go.
Right. I mean, you think about, I'm sure you've done this too. When I was younger, you go to a metal concert and put your fist in the air and just, man, I would just shake my head as hard as I could and whip my sweet mullet around that I had for a long time. And
sweet mullet,
baby. My God, dude, I had the best mullet. And then the next morning, you can't move your head because your neck is so sore and stiff. And so, you think about these guys doing that every night.
No, no.
And
he still does it. Well, not Malcolm. He doesn't do it anymore. But Angus Young still kicks, and he must have steel kneecaps.
They're still going. Yeah.
What he has. There's been past members in the band, but there's so many. I'm going to try to keep this list short. It got to the point that when I was typing this out, I had to change the size of the font because it kept on going on and on. Past members would be Bon Scott, who was the original lead singer. He died in 1980 from alcohol poisoning. Poor guy. George Young, he's a bass fill-in from time to time, and actually he's done it pretty recently. You have Dave Evans, did vocals from 1973 to 74. Larry Van Creet, he played bass from 73 to 74, and again in 1975. Neil Smith played bass. Rob Bailey played bass. Colin Burgess. You have Ron Carpenter, Russell Coleman, Noel Taylor, Peter Clack, like clickety-clack. Mark Evans, Simon Wright, and Chris Slade. These are all gentlemen that have played somewhere, somehow in with AC/DC. And you know that from that list, from Ron Carpenter down, it's very hard to find any history on the gentlemen that were in AC/DC. I think they lasted like a day.
Yeah, and they were all, there's always, especially bands like this that get big, like Metallica, there's these, who is that guy? Ron, somebody who played bass. But if you go back and look, there's people before that. There's always that long list of people that were in the band before they gelled. and before they
Right.
they became really developed their sound and became who they were. So yeah, a lot of these guys are 73, 74, and we don't get into Highway to Hell and Back in Black until what's like 79, 80, something like that. So
Right. Yeah. And what's weird is like most of those bassists I mentioned that played bass for them are all jazz bassists now.
Oh, that's
they
odd.
just moved. Yeah, I know. They all just became boom ba doom boom 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 ba doom.
And when you're in a band like that that's starting out, I mean, if you think about AC/DC in 73 or 74, I mean, how would they know that what AC/DC would become 30 years later?
Right.
So they played some songs, and then they're like, all right, mate, I'm out of here. I do a terrible Aussie accent.
Taking my Fosters.
Taking my bass, and I'm going up the creek to my friend the crocodile hunter. He's putting a band together, and so I'm out of here.
Which one of these is my bass? Because there's 3 basses.
I'm getting I know so little about Australia. I mean, I'm getting my bass, my didgeridoo, and my boomerang, and that's it.
What about your shrimp on that barbie?
And my frickin' basketball.
That's right. That goes the opposite way.
Right, and then Angus is like, oh, basketball? We'll have to keep that in mind, mates.
I got a thundering thought in my head for a song.
It's like I've been struck by thunder.
Hold on 1 second.
I'm going to write that down.
What could it be? What could it be? What could it be?
I've got it. It's Thunderstrike. No, it's not close.
How many syllables in thunder?
Yeah.
Our choice for favorite album from the band.
Well, I'll tell you what. I got to tell you. Of course, I don't have a short answer to anything. I was a kid in the late 70s, early 80s. I started getting allowance. And I would get whatever, like $1 a week or something like that. Whatever it was, I could go to Walmart and I could buy 2 45s with my allowance, little 45 singles, And, of course, I grew up listening to the music that my dad listened to, which was Queen and Blondie and Jimi Hendrix. And the one that really struck me at the time was Tommy by The Who. Actually, it was the movie version. So it was all the movie versions with Tina Turner and Elton John as the pinball wizard and all that, which is probably not appropriate material for a 7-year-old. but
made you who you are today.
Exactly.
Actually. I think that's
Absolutely.
quite a colorful background.
Exactly. So I remember going to Walmart in the probably around 79, 80, 81, in that era. I have a distinct memory, and this is not the album I picked, but I distinctly remember seeing Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap, and it had all the people with their eyes blacked out, like the black bars, over their faces or whatever. And I was like, what is this? This, it just was different, and so it made a mental impression on me at the time. And then I remember going to school. I think I had seen the cover of Highway to Hell, and you have Bon Scott, and he's holding, you've got the devil's tail or whatever. And I remember hearing about there was I'm sure it's an urban I know it's an urban legend, but there was the urban legend that there were those 3 teenage kids, and they were driving their van, and they drove off the side of the mountain, and they were killed, and when they found them, the tape player was stuck on Highway to Hell, and it was just
I never heard that.
Never heard that.
That is funny.
I remember hearing that, and so it was like it was scary. You know what I mean? Like this kind of music was a little scary, and then. So, of course, I've read since then that they went, they almost quit the band, like on the behind the music and things like that they almost called it over when Bon Scott died. And then they eventually found Brian Johnson, who has obviously their voices are different, but it fits that music so well. And,
yeah, it does.
And, so the first song they come in is Back in Black. And they come walking back in. I mean, there's this mental visual of them they're back. They're announcing their return. with a new singer, and that the band hasn't quit, and of course you have that imagery of black, as far as being associated with a funeral,
Right.
and the local, we have a local Rock 100.5, The Cat.
KTTFM, Oklahoma City, Rock 100.5, the legendary Cat.
Is our local little rock radio station, and they still play. I bet you once a day you can hear Back in Black on there. But that song stuck with me as a kid. I mean, just the whole story and everything, and that's really where I first started getting into AC/DC. So that's a long way of saying I had to go with Back in Black.
I'm going to attempt the same length.
All right.
And the same album. I'm not even going to attempt the same album. I'm just going to say it's the same album, Back in Black. When I was a kid, and a couple of years before Back in Black, so late 70s, my brother got into AC/DC before me. He was really into it. He was a big Bon Scott freak. And if you listen to Bon Scott sing, he's got the singing voice, which I think was reincarnated when Accept started, because you get that voice in there, mix of both.
I could hear that.
Brian had that Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap album, and I was like, what is this crap? What is this? Is that a purple pin on your album cover? And he's like, I want to rock. So he blasted that thing, and I couldn't get into it. Then over at a buddy's house, my buddy Kevin's house, he purchased these things called Bose speakers in the 80s. They were huge, and he says, let me show them off. And I got this new album, and this was 1980 something. Well, 1980. And he plays that Back in Black song. And the whole house shook, and just that drum beat and the guitar solo sound in a rhythm was beautiful. And then that voice came in. I was used to the voice.
Right.
And all of a sudden, Back in Black! He starts that up, and I was like, holy crap. So I ended up falling in love with him. It's like everything, my opinion completely changed. I don't know if it's because of my brother, I didn't like him before, or Bon Scott, because I didn't like him before. After that, they were immaculate to me.
And that's just, both of us have mentioned, the title track and the first track, but there are a ton of good songs on there. I mean, from rock radio, you've got, first of all, it's one of those albums where I'll listen to the whole thing. I mean, there's 10 tracks. I will listen to the whole thing, tracks 1 through track 10. And the minute that Hell's Bells, Back in Black, when it ends, you have the very last of that, and all of a sudden I'm like, You Shook Me All Night Long is coming next. It goes right into that, and that goes into Have a Drink on Me. I can hear it in my head that those songs just go, and on the radio, when you hear Hell's Bells or something, right after that, I'm like, the next song better be Shoot to Thrill. And then they go to another song. I'm like, that's not right. It's just those songs.
That's not the way it fits. Right.
My kids, and today, and of course, this being a retro type show, and I wanted to ask you, so I will in just a second, but what I was going to say is, today people are more used to, at a minimum, CDs. I think more people now are used to MP3s or digital media or whatever, where you can just jump around whatever songs you want, or maybe just get a few songs. This is number one, whenever I copy over songs, to my phone or my iPod or whatever, I copy all 10 songs. There's not a lot of albums that I do that with, there's usually almost always some filler on albums, but every one of these songs, and maybe it's just because I've listened to this so many times, but you put it on random, any song that comes up I enjoy. But I wanted to ask you, did you first get this on vinyl or on cassette, or how did you first have this?
Cassette. It would have been a cassette. And of course you didn't have the benefit not the benefit, I think it's actually a hindrance now. You have to skip, you can skip at a touch of a finger now, but even CDs, easy to go forward. But if you wanted to pass a song in the old days, you had to hit either, if you were lucky enough to have that fast forward button that would let you skip over a song, or
the little seek,
the seek button, or you had to listen to the whole thing, and so you basically were trained to do it. But this album made it so easy because every single song was a hit. it was all good.
I had not my one of my first cars. I went through several cars in concession. I was a terrible teenage maniac on the road. But one of my first cars was a black Formula Firebird. Small block 400. Didn't quite look like the Bandits, like Smokey and the Bandit car. This was black. It had a gray stripe down the side that said Formula within a red stripe above that. It might as well have had a stripe that said "Pull my ass over." It had a
with your phone number and address on it.
And the muffler was half hanging. I mean, it just sounded bad, And it had those bad 70s power windows that took like 45 minutes to roll up.
Did it make the noise?
Oh yeah, yeah. And this was like, when I first started driving was right when people started putting these huge monster stereo systems in their car, which I couldn't afford, but I had gone and got these Jensen 6x9s and put them in a little box like in the windowsill and a little tiny amplifier to make them just loud and tinny and just as annoying as possible. And the whole car and the windows were tinted black. Everything was black, except for that little stripe. And I would rewind side 2 of that and time it. And, you pop the cassette out, and then as you're rolling into the school parking lot or whatever, you pop that in, crank it up, and you hear that. And I was like, Back in Black, coming in the parking lot, everybody, stand back, And if people weren't around.
Here comes Jack.
Right. And then if there's like some people in the school, they're walking out, I'd be like, hold on, like, go back to the beginning. And it was the first track. You know what I mean? So you didn't have to worry about queuing it up. You just rewound it. And then you hear that little close, I don't know what, I guess it's a close, hi-hat or whatever, just that tick, tick. And then when that first, it's like a punch to the gut. The guitar chord, it's just burned, and
perfectly written too, because it matches everything with the song, the attitude, and what it's about.
Yeah. I was Back in Black. I came into that car, and that song, it matched the car. It was just the whole attitude, and so...
man,
definitely those albums like and I'll tell you another thing, so you and I both are, I would say you're a musician and I'm like a musician wannabe.
You're pretty good. And we should mention you play guitars. All the guitar work in the beginning of that song are yours.
I did. It was, unfortunately you were able to put enough keyboards and bass and things on that to drown me out, hopefully, where nobody can hear what I did. I butchered
our Rusted Metal theme song is all is his finger work.
No, we did do that. But I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, as far as playing guitars, I'm probably a 2. But I'm telling you this.
Let me tell you this. What all of a sudden you just became.
When it comes to air guitar, I'm a
Don
10.
Rickles right there.
I'm a 10, baby. I will
on air guitar.
I will air guitar the crap out of. My wife. It drives her crazy. I don't know if you do this. I play steering wheel guitar. I'm pretty amazing. I've got the left hand and I'm fretting. And to the point where I will crash the car if there's a solo. And I'm trying to hit that last note, and then we're heading over the edge of a cliff. I'm like, sorry, you gotta hang on there. And then the right hand, it could be on the. Sometimes it's the parking brake.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's the gear shift. Whatever. The right hand moves, but there's not a song on this album that will not send me into air guitar. You're driving and You Shook Me All Night Long comes on and you're just like, it's just every song on this is classic riffage, man.
Oh yeah. I'm a steering wheel drummer.
Oh, okay.
So yeah. And I always hit the bass drum with sometimes it'll be the gas pedal if I'm at a light. so people see me doing that jerk up and they have no clue because it sounds and looks cool in my head,
right?
Because I got the music blasting. Outside of the car, it's dead silent, and this guy has a problem with his brakes.
My Firebird had the thing on the floorboard where you hit it to make your brights come on. So that could have been your kick drum right there. You just been flashing.
That could have been.
You're just blinding oncoming traffic. You're like, sorry, man, it's double bass coming in.
Clicking,
right?
clicking,
They're thinking you're having a seizure or something. But I was just going to mention the last song on side B. See, back when I was a kid, there was side A and side B. I don't know if there's no side B on the CD, but the last song, "Rock and Roll Ain't Noise Pollution," that is like, for some reason, it's it's got that vibe where it kicks off. It's just in your head, you can see them just sitting around like a campfire or something, and he's just playing a guitar, and oh yeah, and then it just builds, and it's like it's definitely a good anthem type song to end everything on, and I would be people like, turn that down, Back in Black. I'm like, hey man, this ain't noise pollution. And then the unfortunately Yukon police district disagreed, and I got a ticket for disturbing the peace. But yeah, I love it how it. There's also a lot of dirty songs on this. When I was a kid, I don't think I noticed that. Of course, AC/DC. I had heard, Big Balls. About their dance balls or whatever, so I knew that they had done that, but now looking up the titles, I'm like, oh gosh, a little.
I thought that had to do with the basketball team in the future.
It was. The basketball team have the biggest balls of all.
That's true.
They're always pushing them through my nets.
The biggest balls on them all.
Yeah, and I thought, oh, this is nice. They're into animal rights. There's one called "Giving the Dog a Bone," which I don't think that's probably animal rights.
So it has nothing to do with PETA. Well, I didn't know that.
No,
really.
And I remember, I don't know if you ever had this experience where you're watching television or something, and something embarrassing comes on TV, like your parents were in the room. And I remember watching Headbangers Ball. I would tape it. I had to work, so I would record Headbangers Ball, and then I would watch it the next day. And I remember watching the video for "You Shook Me All Night Long," where the girl's on the mechanical bull, waving around, and my parents come in, and I'm like, "This is not what you think. This is AC/DC."
And it's not noise pollution either.
Right. And the thing was, it was exactly what they thought. And it was what I thought, too. But we just said that, and hopefully everybody would walk away.
And how did your parents react to the days of metal in general when you were growing up, what you were listening to?
My parents told me, first of all, did not believe in any of the hokey stuff as far as... bands being associated with Satan worship or any of that stuff. My parents couldn't care. I don't want to say they couldn't care less, because that makes it sound like they weren't interested in it. They were,
right,
but they just thought it was malarkey. When Dungeons and Dragons came out, and there was like, oh, Dungeons and Dragons will, rot your head, and you're going to start believing in the devil, and you're going to, not know what reality is, and jump off the roof of your house because you think you can fly. I was like 3rd or 4th grade, and I told my dad, I was like, hey, I heard about this Dungeons and Dragons, but I kind of want to find out what it is, but I don't know. And he was like, okay. And we went to the toy store and he bought me Dungeons and Dragons, the basic set, and came home, and me and my sister and my mom all rolled up characters, and my dad was the dungeon master, and we went through the whole adventure. And then when they were like, okay, this is not devil worshiping. This is a silly role-playing game, and knock yourself out. So as long as they had investigated it, and then they were fine with it. And so I remember, I was like the ideal student all through. Like, I never got in trouble. I never got detention. I had straight A's my entire life. So I remember coming home with a Ozzy Osbourne tape. And some kid had loaned me, and then of course I was like, also I had a horrible guilty conscience. I never got away with anything. So I like take it to my mom, and I think it was the ultimate sin, and there's the girl with the black leather pants, and Ozzy is the big demon,
In that butt.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and the girl had
She's
one
wearing
too.
the same pants on I got now.
Yeah, I mean her
Go on.
her butt was nice also, and you were talking about hers.
Yeah,
I was talking about Ozzy's. The demon. Yeah, but I had showed it to my mom, and I'm like, I'm listening to this, and she was like, "You have straight A's," like other people's parents call us, and they're like, how can our kid be more like your kid? So she was like, keep your grades up, do whatever, so they just never had a problem with it. So
that's good.
And my dad, like I said, he listened to, that era. I mean, his era, not necessarily the heavy stuff, but they had, Iron Butterfly and I'm sure he had Black Sabbath and those type of things, So
yeah, your dad seemed to have the wherewithal to understand it better. My dad was like Kingsman Trio, whatever it was.
Lemon Tree, very pretty. Yeah, I remember that.
And he, 5 foot 2 eyes of blue, and he loved all that old stuff. Nothing. The heaviest I think he ever listened to would have been, maybe the Doobie Brothers, not realizing what it was.
Okay.
And so when I started playing this metal, he's like, that stuff's never gonna last. It just won't be around. They're like, you don't know rock and roll, man. This will last forever. And it's my mom didn't seem to mind. She liked it. She didn't like the screaming, but she didn't seem to mind. She thought it was pretty good. It's got a good beat. She'd sit there and do her aerobic dancing to it. And I'm like, good God, stop.
My dad, he thought everything I listened to was noise. And, this was one of my dad's favorite, I wouldn't say favorite, but classic lines. He would say, if you were to get somebody and try to hum a Metallica tune to them, there would be no way for them to know what that song is, And my dad was a big fan of the Beatles, So I had all those albums, and then we had tapes, and now I have them on CD, and now I have them digitally. So every road trip, at some point in the road trip, Sgt. Pepper's coming on, Abbey Road's coming on, the White Album's coming on, and so I would, I took his point. However, I used to think, like, my wife and I used to listen to, even like, if you think of this, Back in Black, I mean, all these songs, once you know them, they all have a melody. It's just different than, the previous generation of rock or whatever. But I'm pretty sure I could hum,
Oh, you could.
Noise.
Exactly.
Not very good.
You could hum these songs. And that's the thing. These are musical. These are not noise, and it's not out to impress anybody. It's coming from within the guys, and it's played from. I always say this to musicians that I like. I let them know, thank you for playing from your heart and not your head, and that's something that AC/DC has always done, and they've always been a. They've always stuck to that. That no matter what album came out after Back in Black, they stayed with what they were doing. They didn't try to outdo it next. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, there's actually, I think I have this pulled up here in a tab, a famous quote, and I want to say it was after Fly on the Wall. I could be wrong on that, but there was an interview with the band, and basically AC/DC was accused of recording the same music over and over, and so
that's ridiculous.
It was just, and if you listen to
understandable,
sure, right, it's the same. It's all blues based rock, and it does, there are similar chord progressions throughout, multiple albums, and so anyway, I pulled this up. This is a quote from Angus Young, and he says, "Quote, I'm sick."
Wait, can you please do it in an Australian accent?
All right, I'll try. All right. Quote. I'm sick to death of people saying we've made 11 albums that sounds exactly the same. In fact, we've made 12 albums that sound exactly the same.
That's great. Though.
Right. That's
great
classic
quote.
Angus Young. And it's of course, obviously they're able to poke a little fun at themselves. But yeah, there's, if you look at, I keep referring back to Metallica just because that was one of the big bands I grew up with. But if you heard a song, there were different eras, if you will, of Metallica. I mean, there's the early, the thrash stuff is early on. Then later on, you have the not progressive's not the right word, but you have those 10-minute songs on Injustice for All, the 8, 9, 10-minute, that would go through all that. And then, of course, you hit the Black Album, and now you have a more radio friendly, single type format. And so if you were to just randomly throw a song at somebody, if they knew, the Metallica and how they had progressed over time, you could say, this sounds like their earlier work. This sounds like, this is a, Injustice for All era type song. This is something with Lou Reed for some reason. I don't know why they would do that. But
I don't understand that. Yeah.
But AC/DC, I think a lot of stuff you would be hard-pressed to say, is this from the 70s, the 80s, the 90s? I mean, if you took the production value out of it. Yeah, it's very sad. Oh, and speaking of production value, we have to mention Mutt Lange.
Oh, that's right. He's involved with AC/DC as well. I was going to save him for Def Leppard.
Yeah, Mutt Lange produced. He did Highway to Hell first.
Yeah,
and then of course he was, I believe, involved in talking to the guys through Bon Scott's death or whatever, and came back and recorded Back in Black. So I'm sure he was on the colloquial radar from Highway to Hell, but through Back in Black, I mean, that basically, and then right after that, I know he did Foreigner 4. And man, between those two, then it just took off, and then that's when you've got, Def Leppard, and I know he did the Cars, and all those great Def Leppard albums, and then unfortunately Shania Twain, and then that seemed to derail everything, But
he wanted to try something besides the baked beans. He wanted to try.
He did. He tried a little Twain sandwich, and it derailed him for about 15 years. But yeah,
my buddy Tommy Sims, who is the guitarist for the band that we're going to be playing at the end of the show tonight, by the way. He said the best sentence I have ever heard in my life about Mutt Lange, and that is, he said that if I had Mutt Lange producing me, I could fart in a microphone and still come out sounding like a rock god.
Mutt Lange.
What's that?
Mutt Lange.
Oh, the engineer.
Yeah.
He's a good friend of yours.
No,
me neither. I didn't even know he was an engineer until about 5 seconds ago.
I wish I had friends like that.
I wish I had a friend named Mutt Lange.
Dude, I could fart into a microphone and I would be a rock god. With a friend like Mutt Lange, jeez. Well, it's true. We're just going to skip over to the next one. No, I wasn't done yet.
Absolutely, man. He is the master of the knobs. It's true, And then I'm looking here through Mutt Lange's discography of things he produced, and it starts. Well, there's some early stuff, but when that AC/DC, it's just boom, 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 hit after hit after hit, And then the next to last, the last two are Maroon 5 and Nickelback, and then it ends, and I wonder why.
Because he did Maroon 5 and Nickelback.
Right. I mean, when
he looked in the mirror and went, no.
When Back in Black came out, people said, we're talking about that obviously from AC/DC, but even more so with Def Leppard, people said, I want that sound. I want that tightness. I want that production value. And nobody says, God, is there anybody that ever woke up and is like, you know what? I would like to sound more like Nickelback today. I don't think that happens,
No,
So,
and Nickelback, God, sounds talk about having every song sound exactly the same. You could take every song from Nickelback, layer it on top of themselves, and make it'll still come out the same song you started with.
You could take every album they've done, stack them up, and then burn them and make the world a better place. So I don't know if that would. I don't know if that's where you're headed with that, but
I think so. Yeah, pretty much.
And we're going to cover them in depth on the letter N. We're going to do Nickelback. We'll do an entire.
That would be exciting.
You'll have to get a stand-in co-host for that.
Okay, good. Phew, I thought I would do a quarterback before I did Nickelback.
I don't. They might be available. You could probably get them to come on the show. So I don't know.
Hi guys.
Right.
Yeah, can you get me a drink?
Right. And so we're like, we're just two guys from Australia with Nickelback.
Well, I would love for you to go ahead and tell the wonderful news that happened, 2 nights ago?
Oh my goodness. Is this a crazy story or what? So I have to backtrack here is that you and I have been talking about doing this show for about a month.
Right.
And we said, hey, we want to do this. We want to do, we both have a love and a history of 80s metal, heavy metal, hard rock, all that stuff. We're going to talk about bands, and the first letter is A, and, so we ruled out ABBA, and we went right to AC/DC. We said, we've got to kick off the show with AC/DC. And we said, but, are they still relevant? Are they still in the news?
Right.
Well, it turns out they're in the news.
They sure are.
Because yesterday, Phil Rudd, the drummer of AC/DC, was arrested on a murder-for-hire plot, is the words that they've used. So apparently, and the details are still coming out. There may be more details by the time the show comes out, but apparently he was, offering to pay somebody to kill 2 other people. And they weren't Nickelback was the crime. That was the problem. So the police raided his house, and then it says that they found marijuana and methamphetamines. So there's something going on with old Phil Rudd there. In fact, the AC/DC has been in the news because of Malcolm Young stepping down,
right?
And his. Is it his nephew? Is that what you said?
Yeah, it's his nephew, Steve Young.
Okay, so coming in. So that's been in the news. So they've been releasing some PR photos, and Phil Rudd hasn't been in them. So I thought that was kind of odd. And then for this to come out, you think, gosh, well, obviously there's been... to me, that's not a news story that develops overnight. Like the day before, everything's great, and then you wake up Thursday morning... and you're like, I'm going to get some meth and some weed and get some people knocked off. Like there's obviously something that led up to that, and then maybe why he was not available for the PR pictures.
Welcome to Homicide Mart. Can I help you? Yeah.
You got any sharp boomerangs? Very sharp.
We have some that are very sharp and laced with methamphetamines. Come this way.
How about the didgeridoo?
Exactly.
I don't know if there's a didgeridoo. Wouldn't that be that made the sound? Wouldn't that be cool? You'd go, whoa, like that. I don't know.
Is it raining again? Hey, Bill.
But yeah, this is a crazy news story, and especially, even when you hear about murder for hire, that's one of those they don't joke around with. You know
Sounds
what I mean?
like a Frank Sinatra song,
it does.
doesn't it?
Murder for hire. They don't. That's not one like who's that poor girl that I used to love? Amanda Bynes from Nickelodeon, and we watched her on all these Nickelodeon. My kids were little when her shows were on, and so you throw a bong out the window of your apartment and it breaks down. You're probably going to get a slap on the wrist.
Yeah.
At most, you might get a misdemeanor for doing something or whatever. But when you start trying to pay people to kill other people, very rarely is there a warning. They're like, rarely. All right, there's some community service. Don't have anybody else killed. I mean, they pretty much slap you on that first offense on that one.
Yeah, they do.
And also, I don't know if you know this, every single person on Craigslist, because I've emailed them all, that say that they're hitmen are not hitmen. I don't know why. I watch Forensic Files on TV, and they always say they went to a hitman or whatever, and it would turn out it was an undercover cop. I don't think real hitmen post on Craigslist.
No.
And
if those are trappers.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't say, by the way, I don't know if we mentioned this.
Is that how he got busted, by the way?
I don't know. I'm sure it'll come out. But AC/DC released a song and an album called Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap, which is about being basically a paid killer. I mean, so do you remember was it last year, a couple years ago, there was the government guy who sent inappropriate pictures of himself exposed, and his name was Andrew Weiner.
Yeah.
Okay.
Isn't it ironic?
That's the one thing you probably shouldn't do. You know what I mean? Like, if your name is Joey hit by a bus,
you probably don't want to ride the number 59.
Stay
into
out
New
of
York City.
crosswalks. Exactly. So I don't, I'm so sorry. So if you put out an album about, I don't know, a murder for hire, that would be one thing you probably shouldn't get involved in.
Exactly.
I don't know. Life imitating art, I believe is what they say. And when you're a kid, when I was a kid, I had a tough time, I think all kids do, distinguishing between what was real and what was Hollywood and Vine. I remember being extremely scared the first time that I listened to Shout at the Devil from Motley Crue. Because, you hear that in the beginning and you hear this and there's a song, the God Bless the Children of the Beast. And I remember actually plugging my ears. I'm like, okay, Satan, I don't like you. I just like, this 12-string guitar part,
Yeah.
But you have, I have read before that, Slayer was the master of this, in Rain and Blood. If you ever look at the cassette, the first side is side 6 and the back side is 6/6. I never noticed that before.
Yeah, and I had that.
and they interviewed them and they were like, we were so over the top that we thought people got the joke. Yeah. And people didn't get the joke. People, not, the PMRC and not Tipper Gore and all those people in the 80s that I'm sure we'll be covering.
Forgot about their existence.
Further shows. Oh, it was the bane of my existence. But but every now and then something would happen. And of course now, and it's horrible, today we have it with, it seems to be linked usually with video game violence, like when the kids from Columbine, and that was a terrible, terrible act where they had gone and shot up their school. And then of course it was immediately said, oh, these kids played Doom. They played these video games and that made them do that, And I was always the kid that was like, I love playing Doom and I never shot anybody, So I was always kind of defensive of that. But I remember in the early 80s, there was the Night Stalker case. And the Night Stalker was Richard Ramirez, who was a serial killer. And he, he was sexually assaulting women and murdering them in and around Los Angeles. And there's actually a great book. I don't remember what the name of it is. I bought it online, but that covers the entire case. But he was, first of all, if you're influenced to kill people by music or whatever, you're not right in the head. It's not something that happens to normal people. I've listened to some pretty bad. This is today. I just got a new phone a couple of weeks ago. And so I've been loading all my music into it, but I don't have it all sorted out yet into playlists and stuff. So if you hit random, there's no telling what you're going to get. I get NWA, F the Police, followed by Cyndi Lauper, Girls Just Want to Have Fun. It's just literally all over the place. And there's a band called Torture Killer. And I listen to some rotten, terrible music, and so I'm listening to that. And I was just thinking about this today, like, it's not nice music. You know what I mean? It is in the vein of Cannibal Corpse and those types of really like extreme metal that sing about, dismembering people and eating like cannibalism and stuff like that. But it's to me, it's like a horror movie. You know what I mean? Like you watch it and it's that show. And then when it's over, that's it. Those guys really, they all drive Jaguars. They don't really kill people. It's just, that thing. So, but if you listen to that and then you're like, I might like eating a person, then you're gonna might have a, right. It's not the music. It's never, to me, but
it's the mindset of the person that's listening to it.
Yes, absolutely. But go ahead.
I was going to say, if they're that feeble-minded, even listening to...
Well, it could be anything.
Well, listening to Weird Al Yankovic
Sure, nature trail to hell.
Yeah, exactly. So somebody's going to go and, burn nature bars on the side of the woods. And,
Exactly. So Richard Ramirez was known as the Night Prowler. And there was the AC/DC song Night Prowler, which basically says, it's the lyrics of somebody who is sliding into people's rooms late at night or whatever. And when Richard Ramirez I believe when he was arrested, he had an AC/DC shirt on or something, but I know that he had worn an AC/DC hat at one of the murders and left it there. So that was one of the things that they had tried to track him down. And of course, he was painting pentagrams on walls. And the guy's obviously not right,
Right.
And I remember there was when they took him either to the court or I think they're leading him away from the court. He's in handcuffs, and there's just a very brief clip, and they played it on the news over and over. And they try to ask him a question, and he just throws up the devil horns, and he goes, "Hail Satan!" Okay, well, that's just a doofus. You know what I mean? Like, that's dumb. If you're arrested and you're like, "Hail Satan!" Well, Satan better bring you, for starters, a handcuff key. I don't know how he's helping you at that point, but I just remember being scared of AC/DC, that their music had made this guy do that. And I didn't want, to be not influenced, but that it would have some kind of power over people, because when you're 12, Satanism is pretty scary.
Well, of course.
When you're old, it's like Halloween. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's silly, but when you're a kid and you're like, wow, this guy listened to this and he killed people.
Well, and you associated with it. That was the same way with the Motley Crue album, Shout at the Devil. I was like, should I really have this? And then they started the whole thing about backwards messages and all that stuff that was on there. And you just never know.
We may have to, we're going to have to pick between Motley Crue and Metallica on the M's.
Well, we're going to have to obviously do both because they were so prevalent, and you had a great time at a concert recently. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
that's right.
so we can do that.
Hey, have you ever seen AC/DC live?
I have not. Well, no, excuse me. I saw him on a DVD, and I'll be honest, I hate that sentence so much. It's overused nowadays. Like, I lied to you this entire time. So right now I'm going to be honest. I hate heavy metal. I always have.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
I'm an Olivia.
Is this the Night Stalker? Is he influencing you?
Yeah, that and Olivia Newton-John and Barbara Streisand. It's just the way it is. It's really sad. I really like Olivia Newton-John and Barbara Streisand. But,
I do too.
Okay. Well,
I think any kid that watched Grease growing up, when she comes in and says, "Tell me about it, stud," I think
you got Olivia for the rest of your life.
Oh man, I like clean Olivia too, and Xanadu. Holy camole!
We just lost like 30% of our listening.
I know they're tuning out, but I had a buddy. It was probably 9th grade for me. I didn't get to go, but a couple of my friends went, and this would have been with. I think around the time Thunderstruck, that album, whatever that album is. And,
that would have been Fly on the Wall, right?
Yes. And he, in fact, he had a Fly on the Wall skateboard.
Awesome.
My buddy
that'd be worth a ton now.
Yeah, and they dropped the AC/DC dollar bills. Do you remember that? They had dollar bills.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it had Angus Young instead of a president on there. And
I saw that in the video, actually. I remember that.
So he had a bunch of them, and then he brought them to school. He was trying to sell them for $10 or whatever. So I think I stole one from him. I was like, you don't need all those dollar bills.
Still have it?
I don't think so anymore. I probably spent it.
I saw them on VHS, and this is why I said I'm going to be honest. Watching them is not as fun as listening to them for me. And I think it's because when he sings live, he's too busy listening instead of singing. And I'm talking about, I was going to say Angus Young, Brian Johnson. Right. And I didn't say Brian Williams that time. Brian Johnson. And to hear him talk, he talks slower than me. He's like, right, mate, down here. I can't even do it. It's lower than me. But when he sings, it goes up here. And then, so when he sings live, it's not Back in Black. It's,
yeah.
And then he stops and he's like, He's walking around. And it's like, that's not what I listened to on the album, so I...
Yeah, you know what? I never liked his outfits. Like, he always wore like the... Is that weird? That he would wear like the sleeveless denim shirt and then that hat thing or whatever. I don't know what kind of hat that is.
It's a horse jockey hat. No, it's a... I don't know what that is either. I forget what they call it. I used to have one of those hats.
I mean, my metal people were all black shirts, black wristbands, black pants, or blue jeans or whatever, you know. And I don't know, it was like a different kind of style. Like I never wanted to dress like him. And you know what's funny? If you want to find out if somebody's an old school AC/DC fan or an old school metal fan, they refer to Brian Johnson as the new singer.
Yeah, that's true.
The replacement, the new singer. Brian Johnson has been the singer since 1980.
Yeah.
It's 2014. So he's been the singer for 34 years, and Bon Scott was the singer for 7.
I told you the story about my brother and Bon Scott, right?
I think so. Yeah, go ahead and tell it.
Brian is my brother, and he was the one who started with AC/DC before me, and he loved them. And then when Bon Scott passed away, my brother, who is a heavy metal freak, one day we're going to have him on just to have him correct us on everything. He's like an encyclopedia. But he said, I really like Bon Scott, but he died. But he didn't say it like that. My brother talks fast. And he said, Bon Scott, but he died. So for a good 2 years, I thought his name was Bon Scott, but he died. And Scott was the middle name. So I was like, what kind of name? Badidai? What is that?
Badidai, yeah.
It's
Australian.
Australian, Irish, maybe. And so for the longest time, then it was like Bon Scott. And I was like, well, maybe they just dropped his last name. And then finally, at the age of probably 16, I was like, that's not his name. That's my brother saying, but he died.
So on this show, you are Zerbinator.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm Flack.
Right.
So when we get your brother on, he can be Buddy Die.
Call him Buddy Die. Brian Buddy Die.
What's up?
We'll do that. We'll call him Buddy Die. I'll have him tell the story. Knowing him, he'll be like, dude, why'd you tell that story, man? But AC/DC, I don't know. He's one who goes, I don't know if you've heard AC/DC's new album, but have you heard it? And then I'll be like, which one? And he'll know. It'll be like some European or Japanese export of a concert or a recording in the back room somewhere. I was like, how the hell do you know that? Oh, I found it when he's not a computer guy either. He just like zones in on metal. I don't know how he does it, but he knows it.
Well, AC/DC is still recording.
Yeah, they are.
I mean, we're touring, and they took a little break. And
yeah, they're going to be taking a break for a little while.
Well, yeah, Mr. Rudd's going to be taking a break from Freedom very shortly. But, yeah, I mean, they're showing no signs of slowing, it doesn't seem like. So
nope, they are doing...
They're going to be... Did you ever imagine when you were a kid in 1980 when you first heard Back in Black that you were like... Yeah, it always surprises me. Like, when I was a kid... listening to Motley Crue, never in my wildest dreams would I have thought 30 years from now I will be listening to Motley Crue in my car with my children.
No,
and they will all be singing "Shout at the Devil." I would never imagine that. And my kids all know who AC/DC. My kids are 9 and 12, and they know who AC/DC is. They know who the school guy is, and of course, we go to basketball games here, and so they know Thunderstruck and I don't know. It's
weird.
Just.
And I never thought, and I believed my dad when he said this will never last. Back then I was like, yeah, he's right, because I've seen disco come and kind of go back in the 80s. It was starting to fade out.
Well, and then when grunge came in and all this stuff kind of started taking a nosedive as far as popularity or stuff, and there was a time where AC/DC was big on the radio and Motley Crue was big on the radio and all these bands, and then suddenly you had C&C Music Factory, and you had all these dance things, and it kind of and it just pushed all that stuff.
Yeah,
and then there were. We could go on and on. I'm sure we will in future shows, but you had the people that weren't metal, but they looked metal. You know, they had the hair and they had all the guitars and they had the moves, but you know,
they came and went.
They weren't
with
metal.
them. Yeah, they came and went also in like a matter of hours.
Yeah, and we can't do Nickelback because we're going to do Nelson.
Oh yeah, we got to do Nelson.
I can't live without your love and affection.
I forgot about that. Weren't they albino or something?
They were Ricky Nelson's kids, right?
I guess so.
And they were twins. So, and hopefully no longer recording.
No.
So,
they're playing in a coffee house somewhere.
When you come up with a band name, especially back in the 70s or 80s or whenever, there was no concept of the internet.
No,
there was no concept of even home computers. Really, I mean, not like what we have today, you know. And so there are some horribly named bands like the and the band and things like that are impossible to find on Google because they're just horribly named, you know. And so I every time I would go through my computer to look for like MP3s on songs and stuff, AC/DC is named like 80 different ways. Like there's AC/DC all one word. There's AC-DC.
Right.
There's there's no, you can't put a slash in a file name.
No, I know. I had to dash it on the name of this file.
Right.
Or
a lightning. There's no lightning.
No lightning key yet.
So
use the percentage.
I just always. Yeah. Did you ever? Were you a kid that drew metal band logos?
I was the
on
captain, and people would hire me to do
Really?
Twisted Sister on the back because I could do the Twisted Sister logo perfect in 3D, and then put the bricks on it for Come Out and Play. You know, the pink bricks.
Oh yeah.
And I did that on like 7 jackets when it was really cool back then.
I just did folders, like my school folder, you know, or whatever. But I was pretty good at the AC/DC logo. You put the AC and then the little lightning and then the little DC, you know. And
did you do the gothic 3D look of it?
I had one that was really good. That was unfortunately on my history book.
So you had to give it. It's history now, that's for sure. But
I did turn in my artwork there, and I think I had to pay a fine too. But you know what? For those about to rock, you know,
we salute them.
They saluted me.
Well, that's our first edition of
Rusted Metal.
And I cannot wait to do it again.
Yeah, man, it's fun.
The next episode is definitely going to be Anthrax.
Time to go.
Well, tonight I'm going to end the show with a song called Soul to Soul by a band called Thicker Than Water.
Oh, yeah, I want to hear this.
Oh, it's going to be great. Thicker Than Water is a band with my buddy Jeff Brassfield playing guitar and lead vocals. You have Jeff Mortimer on drums, Tommy Sims, who I've grown up with since birth, on guitar, and Steve Zielinski, who plays bass and killer vocals. This band is really good. They just released an album it was the summer before this past summer. I forgot I moved. When I lived in Virginia, it was new. It's called Coming Soon, Side 1, and it's available on Amazon and iTunes through Potomac Records. You can go to potomacrecords.com to get it. Tommy Sims and I grew up together loving metal as well. We actually recorded a podcast together about heavy metal, the top 10 heavy metal songs that we loved from the 80s. And when it comes to me writing a song, and if I'm doing something heavy, I send it to Tommy to make sure I did it right. And then Tommy is
cool.
He and I have always collaborated when it comes to perfection in metal-styled music. So to close the show, I'm going to be playing Soul to Soul. Please check them out. They're really good.
I did want to say that I haven't picked up a guitar in, I don't know, 15 years, 10, 15 years, something like that. I just haven't you have kids and you have all these things and work and stuff, and you just get sidetracked. Your hobbies go away. So I just want to thank you for coming up with that idea. For doing the intro thing. That was fun. And
Yeah, you did well for somebody who hasn't played in a while.
You know what? I had calluses on my fingers for a week. After it turns out you don't get calluses from the air guitar and the steering wheel. You put them on the strings and then they come right back. But that was fun, man. It's really kind of made me want to keep doing that a little bit.
It's fun, and you're welcome. Thank you for thanking me, because it didn't show when you played. It sounded like you've been doing it for a while there. So, and I appreciate you playing as well, and I appreciate you doing this show with me.
Oh yeah, It's going to be a blast, man. So next week or whenever we get back together, we'll be lowercase a Anthrax.
We'll be doing the history and thusly of Anthrax. I got a lot of good Anthrax stories.
Awesome, dude. Awesome. So let's hear this Thicker Than Water.
Thank you guys so much for listening to this week's Rusted Metal. Join us next time when we listen to another metal band, Anthrax, from the 80s. Good night.